So we'll start with some opening prayers. Oh, oh, oh. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunattu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Hari Om. On behalf of Chinmaya Mission UK, a very warm welcome to all of you to this evening's talk and guided meditation, A Winter Lockdown, Coping with Meaning. This will be the first in a series of talks that Chinmaya Mission UK will be hosting on this topic, and more details of the upcoming talks will be provided later this evening. Before we get started with tonight's program, a couple of brief housekeeping points. All participants will be muted to avoid background noise, though there will be the opportunity to ask questions through the chat function in Zoom. So throughout the evening, please type your questions to the participant named Q&A, and these will be addressed at the end of the talk. This has of course been a very different type of year, one which has posed a unique set of challenges for each and every one of us. And whilst life under lockdown has been a reality for a number of months now, for many, this has not necessarily become easier as the months have gone by. Whilst we here in the UK may be about to emerge from our second national lockdown, there will of course be a number of ongoing restrictions across the country, which mean that we will continue to live under these circumstances for a while longer, and through the winter nights we have ahead of us. This lockdown can make it difficult for us to find meaning in our lives, though the pursuit of this remains all important. Vedanta and Yoga offer us ways to cope with the lockdown challenges that we face and can help us to find meaning and to continue our spiritual growth. And this is exactly what our speaker will be sharing with us this evening. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Ramesh Pattni. Dr. Ramesh Pattni is a psychologist and a Hindu theologian whose research is in the intersection of these traditions. He is a practicing counselor and psychotherapist and has a doctorate from the University of Oxford based on his research into Patanjali's text on classical yoga. He is considered an authority in yoga psychology. He currently tutors at the University of Oxford and over the past 2 decades has conducted workshops and public talks on Hinduism and Advaita Vedanta. He also holds regular weekly classes on Hindu scriptures, including the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and texts and commentaries by Swami Chinmayananda. Rameshji also holds and has held many public positions, and for his voluntary work in interfaith relations and community services in the UK, he was bestowed an OBE in the New Year's Honours 2020 by the Queen. He has a deep interest in presenting the psychological concepts of the ancient traditions and for psychological well-being in today's world, which is why we have very much been looking forward to today's talk. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Dr. Ramesh Pattni.
Hari Om and Namaste and welcome to this talk. So it is going to be a talk, interesting talk, because we are going to present spirituality within the context of lockdown and how we are having this experience of lockdown and what can we do about it and what are the kind of ancient wisdom which is available to us to make this difference in our life. So I'm going to share the screen because I've got some slides which I'm going to present. So I hope you can see the slide. So a winter lockdown, coping and resilience with meaning. And meaning is particularly important here because meaning is what is derived from our spiritual way of living. So what I'm going to talk about today is lockdown and its consequences. So we all know that we have got this experience of lockdown now. Since March, we have been in lockdown, and we know the consequences of lockdown at all levels of our being. And each one of us has got a unique experience of how we experience this lockdown. Secondly, I'm going to talk about searching for meaning and means. Okay, we are in lockdown, we are having a certain experience which can be very distressing. And then what do we do about it? What is our response? And one of the most significant way of responding really is through meaning and means. And for us then to talk about sadhana, sadhana is the way in which we practice a certain philosophies of spirituality. And these are practical meaning and means, which are very much at our disposal in order for us to deal with whatever is going on in our lives because of this lockdown and its consequences. And particularly focusing on the Bhagavad Gita, because this is really the most wonderful text which gives us all the tools and techniques you will need throughout your life, and particularly in challenging situations. And this gives the pathways to inner balance. And I'm going to also take you through various steps of meditation. And meditation in the Bhagavad Gita is something which is of such a wonderful value that it can immediately make a difference wherever we are, whatever we are doing, in whatever kind of distress we are. Meditation and the various steps of meditation can have a profound effect immediately. So taking this, first of all, as the lockdown and the consequences, of course, we all know what the consequences are in terms of our change existential reality. How we experience ourselves in this reality of the lockdown is different from our normal way of being. And people keep on saying, yeah, this is the new norm. This is the new norm. So there is a transition between the old norm and the new norm. And there's going to be another transition from the norm which you're experiencing now to another norm. So it's going to be with us for some time. And here we find that there is a greatly increased uncertainty about so many things that I don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. And death is at the doorstep. At the doorstep, death is there. It is confronting us right in our faces. There is loss, there is grief. We are, continuously kind of hearing about loss and grief within our own families or even in the community and the society. And every day we get figures. So many people have died. So many have got COVID, and so on and so on. And it has become a total reality that death is here facing us right now. There is social isolation, loneliness, which is being experienced in this lockdown. And many people come as clients, in this deep state of distress because they are so lonely in the place in which they are without any kind of human contact. There are challenging economic, technological difficulties which are also being experienced in this lockdown. And people are losing jobs, people are losing their incomes, they're hardly able to maintain themselves. These are again the consequences of the lockdown. And of course, there are personal challenges to our own freedom and our own meaning. How do we kind of think about this lockdown? How has our life kind of shifted into a new way of being in the world? And what are the restrictions in terms of our freedom and the choices which we can make whilst we are trying to grapple with this enormous consequential lockdown? And of course, winter has got its own difficulties, which adds another layer to this lockdown. And we have to confront the dark days of winter. There is less daylight available, low temperature, discomfort and distress is there, feelings of sadness, low mood that can lead to depression, and this thing called seasonal affective disorder, which many people suffer from. This is called SAD. And, taking also that into account, we got a double whammy, as it were. Once we are in the lockdown, and then the winter is coming along, and this is going to make life even more difficult. So thinking about a lockdown and its effect on mental health become worse during the period of lockdown restrictions. People are experiencing these restrictions, being able to go outside, and worries about the health of family and friends becomes a key factor which is driving poor mental health. There is a lot of research which has been done to assess the mental health of people during this lockdown. And it is said that more than between 55 and 75% of the people are experiencing some kind of mental health issue, whether it is intense or whether it is something which is experienced as a kind of distress coming now and again. There are a lot of people who have been affected by this lockdown and the mental health. In the young people, boredom has become a major problem. This is also being shown by research. Loneliness has been a key contributor to poor health as well. Feelings of loneliness, 2/3 of these people are suffering because of this loneliness and isolation which has come about because of the lockdown. And it has had a greater effect on young people. So we can see that there is a direct relationship between the lockdown and what the effects are on our mental health. And if we can just narrow down what specifically we are talking about an increase in stress in dealing with the lockdown. What is stress? Stress is a state of disharmony or a threat to status quo. Physiological changes are taking place. A lot of kind of adrenaline which is being thrown into this because of the challenges which are confronting. There is alertness, there's focus, there's energy, but this energy then becomes available in a kind of negative way, so that what is experienced is a demand placed by the lockdown, and it may exceed the perceived resources which we have. So this imbalance between perceived resources and the perceived demands creates this condition of stress. And if we can imagine that this demand is now called lockdown, it is making so many demands on our physical, mental, intellectual resources that there is an imbalance which is developing. And therefore we try to cope with it. How are we coping with it? I will explain in a bit. But what it really means is that the ability to maintain emotional control, think rationally, problem solve is the way we try to think about these things. And the next thing is resilience. We have to think about these three things: stress, coping, and resilience. Now, resilience is a resistant quality that permits a person to quickly recover and thrive despite adversity. So, what is our objective? Our objective is to become resilient. And this resilience doesn't come just overnight by using one or two techniques. It's a long term thing which begins to develop as we get into certain ways of being in the world, and certain attitudes and beliefs which we begin to change in such a way that it gives us this resistant quality. And when you have this resilience, whatever challenge you are going through, you can fall down, yes, but you are immediately able to get up and get going again. And remember that although I'm talking about all these things and these wonderful techniques which are available to us, remember, if you're having any treatment for your mental distress, you must continue with it. Okay, don't stop any of the stuff which you're, whether it is medication or whether it is any kind of counseling you're receiving. Don't stop it, because this is something in addition to what I'm going to talk about, which is available through the spiritual dimension. Okay, so recognizing stress, I'm sure all of us recognize stress. At the physical level, there are certain symptoms which begin to appear: sleeplessness, we begin to eat more, or we begin to eat less, drinking, smoking, clumsiness, headaches, all these things. Mentally, there are mistakes, we get confused, forget about things, avoid decisions, we try to run away from things, we try to not get involved, we try to kind of engage in a different kind of way. This is the crisis mindset. This crisis mindset is really coming from experiencing this stress in the lockdown. Emotionality also, irritability, anxiety, rapid mood swings can happen. There is a low self-image because we are not actually experiencing our life in the way in which we were used to experience, because our self-image dependent on so many factors which were available to in the old norm, which are not available to us now. There's a loss of sense of humor as well. And even in the spiritual dimension, we can feel lost, completely lost. We are no longer valued. And we keep on thinking, what's the point? Who cares? What's the point? And all these things lead us to expressing and experiencing distress in our lives. Okay, so let's see the connection between these things. So winter lockdown, we have got stress which arises. We are either unable to cope or unhealthy coping. So unhealthy coping, like I'm trying to, cope with this thing by, various different habits like smoking and drinking, which begin to arise. And therefore, these are unhealthy ways of coping. Some people also resort to medication and drugs and various different things, unhealthy ways of coping. And what happens then is we get into a state of distress, chronic distress, because we are not able to cope with it. On the other hand, healthy coping is there. On the other hand, resilience can be developed, cultivated through various different means, and that leads to mental well being. So here we got a kind of map as to how we are going to function in the lockdown, whether we go in the direction of unhealthy coping or not being able to cope and feeling this distress all the time, or we go towards healthy coping and resilience, which is going to give us mental well-being. And going further, distress can be at the level of physical, it can be personal to ourselves, or it can be in relationship to other people as well. And we find that anxiety is really one of the major things which comes about in this lockdown. Anxiety, which is then phobia, panic attacks, social anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, PTSD, and all these things are related to the state of anxiety because of the lockdown. Many people come with this extreme sense of anxiety, always kind of ruminating and worrying and anxious about everything in their lives. The other thing is depression and uselessness, worthlessness, meaninglessness. These are the kind of ways in which one experiences oneself in this state of depression. And I'm sure that many of us have experienced this thing right at the very beginning of the lockdown and, expressing them in our lives in this kind of way. And this becomes something which then begins to create a lot of distress as we continuously experience these kind of anxieties and depressions. So mind is the key element in this coping with stress, because it is through the mind and in the mind that we experience whatever we are experiencing. And I will show you how this kind of model of the mind works according to the Bhagavad Gita, and how we can use that model of the mind, and how Bhagwan actually, Lord Krishna, talks about this way of being in the world through this kind of model of the mind. But it is the mind. The mind is the key element in all our experiences and all the ways in which we begin to cope with the lockdown. And it is connected to all aspects of our individual identity, the sensation, the perceptions which we receive from the outside world as we perceive the outside world. And there is a deeper subliminal layer of the mind, which then feeds into the conscious mind and creates all these various experiences. And all these things come together in the moment to define our experience. And experience is constantly, rapidly shifting, changing, modifying in very complex ways. And it is the state of the mind through which this flow of thought and feeling and everything else is going on. It is the state of the mind which determines how we are feeling about ourselves. And because the mind is the key element, we have to think about what can I do with my thought process? What can I do with the function of the mind so that it begins to take me towards a healthy way of being? And this is what spirituality is going to give us. So, keeping all that in mind, I'm going to just now do the first meditation exercise, which is called stillness. So, wherever you are, take up a very comfortable posture, close your eyes, and this is just an exercise in stillness of the body. So, take a few moments to become completely still in the body. No movement at all except for the movement which is naturally going on of the breathing. So breathe normally and keep your body absolutely still in a relaxed situation. Nothing to do, nothing to worry about, nothing at all to kind of consider in doing. Just keep your body absolutely still. And with that, begin to still your gaze as well. So in the mind's eye, imagine that a point of light in front of you. In the mind's eye, there is a point of light, and just focus on that point of light with the eyes closed. So there is stillness in the body, stillness in the gaze. And when we exercise this stillness within ourselves, it begins to have an effect on the mind. The mind starts settling down. It may take a bit of time. Don't worry about this, but just keep still in the body, keep still in the gaze. Just take a couple of minutes to do this, and you'll begin to feel the quietness coming in the body, because as you bring stillness to the body, that stillness of the mind begins to develop, and you feel that calmness arising in the mind, because there is a deep connection between the body and the mind. And as we are experiencing certain things in the mind, so the body is an expression of that state of the mind. And taking it into the reverse direction, if we still the body, still the gaze, we begin to experience a state of calmness, inner calmness. So this is one exercise which can be done anytime. You can do it wherever you are. Just take a few moments of stillness in the body, stillness in the gaze, and it begins to calm the mind down. So let's go to the next thing, which is searching for meaning and means. Now, meaning is very important, because meaning, purpose, and values are three things which determine the framework of our life. When we talk about meaning, what is the meaning of my life? What is the purpose of my life? And what are the values which I follow? At the heart of spirituality and the spiritual solution to stress and distress is about meaning. So how does that work out? So a winter lockdown, we are experiencing stress and distress, and then what happens? A spiritual solution is available to us. Okay, not the other kind of spiritual solution, but the solution which is given to us in the scriptures. Okay, and this means that we can begin to have healthy coping mechanisms, and these are the techniques of managing the mind, solution focused techniques, which are going to lead us towards a healthy way of coping with our lives. Okay, and secondly, resilience. Remember, these are the two things which we are trying to cultivate within ourselves to cope with the lockdown. One is, how can we cope with the lockdown in our day-to-day, moment-to-moment, immediate experience, and how can we begin to cultivate a strong sense, a base of resilience, which allows us to bounce back again and again as we go through the lockdown. And this resilience is actually focused on meaning, purpose, and values. If the meaning, purpose, or values are clear in our mind, and they are according to the prescriptions of the Bhagavad Gita or any of the scriptures, Upanishads, of course, Bhagavad Gita is the distillation of the Upanishads and the wonderful knowledge of the Upanishads. And Bhagavad Gita gives us a very clear framework of meaning, purpose, and values, which if we then begin to bring into our lives, it will create this enormous resilience which can withstand anything. Okay, and this is the basis of mental well-being. So this is a spiritual solution, and we'll go into detail about how this managing of the mind and this establishing ourselves with the meaning, purpose, and values, how that can be done through the prescriptions of the Bhagavad Gita. So meaning and means. Religion, spirituality gives us this universal and holistic orienting system that takes care of all the dimensions of our life. So even if you think about the Yoga Sutra and the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, Ashtanga Yoga with the 8 limbs, which takes care of each and every aspect of our life, it creates a framework for our living in a meaningful way, in a purposeful way, and it gives us this resilience in ourselves, which can cope with all these challenges. It can give meaning to human existence and the meaning of suffering, because this is what we are suffering at the moment. We are suffering because of the lockdown. How do we make sense of this suffering? And how do we then think about what is the meaning of this suffering and what is the meaning indeed of my human existence as well? And it can provide a system of values that one can live by. So there is no confusion in the mind. There's no confusion of should I follow this pathway or should I follow that pathway. The clarity is there, which is given to us by the scriptures, and immediately there is clarity in terms of what needs to be done. And it can provide a clear basis of choice and action. So whatever choices I want to make, it is based on the values, which is based on the meaning, which is based on the purpose. It gives a holistic framework within which we can function. So again, to remind ourselves that it is giving us not only the ways of coping with life and suffering, but also it is giving us the resilience, which is developed through a deep commitment to spiritual meaning and spiritual purpose of life. Now, that is the important thing to remember, is that spirituality gives us this wonderful, profound package, which we can then take on board through this inner transformation, which is going to take place through the practice, through our sadhana. And with this kind of way of functioning, it gives us this resilience where we can cope with anything, where we can deal with any challenge. And coping, again, is important to understand. It is the process by which we begin to live our life in such a way that we are able to redress this imbalance between the resources and the demands which are made on us. We are able to cope with whatever is going on. Both these things are provided by our spiritual life. Okay. So psychology identifies 5 factors which serve as multiple ways of coping through spirituality. First of all, it gives us meaning. Religion provides a meaning, making way of functioning in the world. It provides ways of control, mastery and control over oneself and the world. It provides comfort. Anxiety can be reduced through spiritual practice, intimacy, closeness to God, and people through the divine principle. And it also provides a pathway towards inner transformation. This life transformation can come through because we have now got a new significance in our life, which is derived from spirituality. So let's do another meditation exercise, okay? And this is going to be about body scan and relaxation. So taking the first exercise of stillness in the body, stillness in the gaze. If you can just take up that posture again and close your eyes, become absolutely still. And in the stillness of the body and the stillness of the gaze, I'm going to take you through this exercise, guiding through a body scan, at the same time relaxing the body completely. And if you ever have any trouble sleeping because of this lockdown and the conditions it has brought for you, this is a wonderful exercise, a meditation exercise, which can immediately calm your mind and your body to put you to sleep. So take up that posture, stillness in the body, stillness in the gaze, and we are going to scan the body from the tips of the toes right to the top of the head. And every time I mention the part of the body, just focus your awareness completely on that. Begin to become aware of all the sensations going on there, whether it is touch or pressure or temperature, whatever it is, just totally focus on that part of the body, starting with the toes and the feet and the ankles. Just focus your awareness on the toes, feet, ankles, and become aware of all the sensations here. Let go of everything else. Just focus on this part of your body, scan that part, and relax. Going on to the next part, the lower legs and the knees. Again, focus your awareness just on the lower legs and the knees, and then become aware of all these sensations arising in that part of the body, whether it is temperature, pressure, whether it is just touch. Just become aware of that. And then relax and let go. Going up the upper legs and the hips. Just become aware of all the sensations here. Now the bottom, become aware of the pressure wherever you're sitting. The contact with the surface on which you're sitting, just become aware of that pressure. Touch, temperature, whatever is going on, just become totally aware, relax and let go. Now take your awareness to the abdomen. Here you may find movement is going on because of the breathing. Become aware of the movement. Become aware of the touch, sensations of pressure. Whatever sensations are there, just become aware of it. Relax and let go. Moving up to the chest. Movement of the chest is taking place. Just become conscious, aware of that. Relax and let go. Now take your awareness to the lower back, middle back, upper back. And as you become aware, also consciously relax all parts of the body. Take your awareness now to the shoulders. This is where we normally store a lot of tension. Just relax the shoulders. Let go of all the tensions here. Upper arms, elbows, lower arms, wrists, hands and fingers. Become aware of all the sensations in the arms. Relax and let go. Now take your attention to the back of the neck. This is again where we store a lot of tension. Let go of all the tension. Become aware of the tension. Relax and let go. Back of the head, top of the head, forehead, muscles around the eyes. Relax the jaw and the front of the neck. Now do a slow and steady scan right again from the tips of the toes to the top of the head. If there is any remaining tension anywhere, just relax. Relax the whole body. Let go of all the tensions. Take a few moments to enjoy this relaxation through the body scan, and all the tensions have now gone. And as we relax the body, there is also the relaxation of the mind. The mind becomes relaxed, becomes calm, it becomes peaceful. Okay, let's conclude the exercise and go further. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is sadhana, meaning and means. What is the philosophy behind it? What is the understanding? And what is the psychological model which kind of guides us into thinking about the Bhagavad Gita and what Bhagavan Shri Krishna tells Arjuna? So the meaning of sadhana, it is something which is performed. It is a means to an end. Very simply speaking, this is what sadhana is about. It is essentially the preliminary discipline that leads us to the attainment of the spiritual experience. Now, spiritual experience is not the, we can think of it in many different levels. We can think of spiritual experience as this sense of presence and calmness and peace within the mind. Or it can be the experience of enlightenment. But whatever it is, it needs this discipline for there to be, for us to then attain this kind of spiritual experience, whatever that experience is. It is the highest good, or siddhi. It is an attainment. It is a perfection. So like Bhagavan Shri Krishna mentions about the person of perfection at the end of chapter number 2, and he gives a whole series of markers or the benchmarks of this highest state of perfection. And that becomes our benchmark, is that we have to move towards that kind of way of being in the world through the techniques which is showing to us. And it includes all the religious practices, even rituals. Whether we do puja, any kind of puja is become, this is a religious practice which can also be helpful in terms of a spiritual experience. And this is the practical side of religion, and it has got many precepts and practices that are given in the scriptures. In other words, the sadhana is a whole set of disciplines and techniques which are available to us. Why? Because we need to attain a certain level of perfection. We need to attain our spiritual goal, and we need to kind of address this by practicing some of the techniques which are all these disciplines which are given to us at all different levels: body, mind, intellect, dexterity in action, emotional regulation, cognitive efficiency, effectiveness. All this can be bundled together to say, here's sadhana, this is what you got to do. These are the practical ways in which you can attain this response to the lockdown. So let's go further. Now, approaches to the divine and the truth. So here we are now focusing on spirituality, and sadhana is all about the spiritual experience. So all the practices are based on attainment of a lived experience of the truth or divine. So think of sadhana as practical means which are going to take you towards the lived experience of the truth or the divine, not an intellectual understanding. There is a difference between intellectual understanding and the lived experience. Lived experience can be only attained through this kind of regular and intense practice which are given to us in the scriptures. And also that the beliefs and values can be accepted, although these need to be lived. We can accept a belief. Yes, I believe in God, but God, does that belief in God make any difference to your life? Because if does not make any difference to your life, you might not have any relationship with God. Because whether God exists or does not exist, if it is not going to make any difference, which means effectively God does not exist for you. So beliefs and values can be accepted, but if they are not percolating down in my day-to-day lived experience, they have little value. Okay, although yes, there is value in terms of understanding, but it has to be translated into a lived experience of the truth, and that can only be done through sadhana. This is a systematic way of employing all of our faculties, all of our minds, feelings, choices, action, living a life of dharma. This is the message of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is the lived experience of the truth through sadhana. Therefore, sadhana becomes very important in terms of translating the knowledge of the scriptures into this lived experience, personally, individually, unique to ourselves. And it is through this experience that the purpose of human life is fulfilled. According to the scriptures, the fulfillment of our human life is really that we attain moksha, liberation. Now, that may seem a very distant goal, okay? But remember that we've been in lockdown for a long time. We've been in lockdown of something called avidya. Avidya lockdown has been there with us through lifetimes. This lockdown of the COVID is only another layer which has brought this lockdown into a different level of lockdown. Okay, so we need to release ourselves from the stress of the lockdown which we are experiencing now, but the human purpose really is about lifting ourselves out of this lockdown of avidya once and for all, so that we don't come back to this suffering human existence. So this journey of the individual can be summarized in one of the most ancient prayers in this humanity. The most ancient prayers which is given to us in the scriptures: Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And what does it mean? Take me from untruth to the truth. Take me from darkness to the light. Take me from mortality to immortality. What a wonderful way of summarizing the meaning and the purpose and the values of life. Just 3 sentences here actually gives us the whole journey of the individual summarized in this wonderful way by this most ancient of the prayers. And it is through sadhana that we are going to pass from one state to the other. It is through sadhana that disharmony becomes harmony. Disintegration of the personality becomes an integration of the personality. Multiplicity, diversity to unity of vision. This unity of vision, which is available to us through sadhana, and it takes us forward into this journey from untruth to the truth, from darkness to light, from mortality to immortality. It is the state of the mind that comes into a state of harmony and peace. So there is no doubt in my mind that spirituality, sadhana, is actually the most appropriate means of dealing not only with COVID, because this is going to be there and not be there, but how are we going to carry on with the challenges which are yet to come? There's no doubt in my mind that spirituality and sadhana gives me the equipment to not only cope with life, but to create and cultivate this resilience within myself. So what is experience? Now, if you say, now, yeah, you're telling me about sadhana, this is how it is, this is the connection between lockdown and sadhana and meaning, purpose, values. Now, what is going to be experienced by the sadhaka? Sadhaka is the one who is the practitioner of the various techniques. What is going to be available? Shantim Nirvana Paramam, supreme peace, Bhagavad Gita 6:15. Sukham Uttamam, highest joy. Nirdosham Samam, perfect harmony. Sthira Buddhi, self-composure, complete control of the Buddhi. And then Anta Sukham, Antarama, Antarjyotihi, inner peace, joy, illumination is available to us. By what means? By sadhana. By connecting ourselves to the spiritual way of life, all these things are available. Imagine if I ask you, what do you want in life at this moment? What are you looking for? I'm looking for peace. I'm looking for harmony. I'm looking for this sthira buddhi, where the buddhi doesn't go all over the place and keeps on agitating with each and every small thing which is coming in my life. I want self-composure. I want inner peace. This is all available to us through the practice, through the sadhana, which is very clearly given to us by Bhagavan Shri Krishna. And in his own words, Bhagavan says, yoga is evenness of the mind. It is equanimity of the mind. 248, yoga is dexterity in action. 250, yoga is disunion from the union with suffering. Very interesting definition Bhagavan is giving. It is the disunion from the union with suffering. All again is available to us through the philosophy and practice of the Bhagavad Gita. These experiences of balance and peace and harmony are through sadhana. So remember, sadhana becomes the way in which we are going to deal with this. So let's go a bit further into focusing on what this sadhana is, which the Bhagavad Gita is going to give us. So remember, Arjuna is the disciple. He is the human disciple, and Bhagavan Shri Krishna is the divine teacher. So there is a discourse going on between the divine teacher, Lord Shri Krishna, and the human disciple, Arjun. But it's not human disciple, is not Arjun. Actually, it represents you and me. And the wonderful teaching of Bhagavad Gita is so relevant to the lockdown because Arjuna himself is in a state of lockdown. What happens, he goes into a state of crisis. As he's driven to the middle of the battlefield by Lord Krishna, he sees his kith and kin, he sees his elders, he sees his teacher, and he experiences these 3 things. Shoka, Moha, Bhaya. Remember, I was telling you about depression and anxiety. Shoka and Bhaya is nothing but depression and anxiety. He is in that state of depression and anxiety right in the middle of the battlefield. One of the greatest warriors of his time experienced this breakdown, state of crisis. Moha, he's got deluded about his whole situation in the moment. Shoka, related to this depressive state of the mind. Bhaya is fear. Anxiety is nothing but bhaya. It is fear. And this delusion about Where am I? What am I doing? Confusion, total confusion. And he is in a state of extreme anxiety projected as pity and grief towards the elders and the kith and kin. His power of discrimination has been overpowered and he has lost his morale. And he is in this, he may have wanted the victory and the kingdom, but he is overcome by anguish, which shatter his mental balance, his hopes, and his ambitions. Anguish is this state of anxiety, state of confusion and anxiety when making a choice. What should I do? And this is his question to Bhagavan Shri Krishna. I have now handed this thing over to you. I have surrendered to you. Tell me what to do. Tell me clearly what to do. This is our situation in lockdown. We are totally confused by this new way of this virus which has come into our lives and has created this lockdown in this battlefield of COVID. We are also experiencing Shoka, Moha, and Bhaya. And therefore, what applies to Arjuna as this prescription which Lord Krishna is giving to his Arjuna disease, that is also available to us. And that is what is going to guide us through into unlocking ourselves from this distress. So this is the model. Now think of the model of the mind. Here are the vasanas, which are subliminal kind of impressions, which have been going on throughout all of our lives, not only this life, but previous life as well. Arjuna is saying, killing is bad. I must have a compassionate attitude towards my kith and kin. I need to act, but I am confused. These are beliefs and attitudes and intention. And these thoughts are now revolving around, I cannot fight because of this, I cannot fight because of that. And he goes on to have these feelings of anxiety, guilt, shame, and grief. And body sensations, he himself mentioned what these body sensations are. Weakness, skin is burning, tearful eyes, and his behavior is what? I'm not going to fight. Tell me what to do, he tells Lord Sri Krishna. So this is what is going on in our cells in the lockdown. Exactly the same thing. It is the beliefs, attitudes, and intentions which we have carried for this lifetime, which is then translating itself into the body, into the mind, into the feeling, into our behavior, so much so that we begin to suffer because of this lockdown. And what is there? Anxiety and depression. This is what the state of the mind is in the lockdown. So what is the psychology of sadhana? Change in belief, attitude, and intention. This is the knowledge which is being given to us, what to change in terms of belief, what to change in terms of attitude, how to act in the world through the right intention. And this then leads us to reframing our experience through a spiritual meaning, purpose, and values. Wonderful way in which Bhagavad Gita actually teaches us this whole psychology of the sadhana. And primarily on the path of knowledge, it's about listening, reflecting, and practicing. And with its practice and focus, what begins to happen is that we attain this transformation, spiritual attainment, mental well-being. And this is what is the overall structure and the framework within which we have to think about. What is it that I have to change in my belief, in my attitude, in my intention? Because this is what the vasanas represent. If we unpack the meaning of vasana, or my inclination and tendencies, we can think of it as changes in belief, changes in attitude, changes in intention. And therefore, listening, reflecting, and practicing becomes the sadhana. This is the philosophy of sadhana. This is the psychology of sadhana. This is what we need to do in the broader context. Okay, so this is the logic of sadhana. And the approach of Bhagavad Gita is reframing of existence. Jiva as this, me as this personal identity. I'm a spiritual being in my true essence. To understand this very fundamental meaning of life. Then to look at this jagat, this world which has brought this lockdown. I'm locked down in this, my own world, as it were. And to understand and begin to understand that this world is nothing but the manifestation of the divine. And to understand God, Ishvara, the God, the divine. And how do I understand divine in both its manifest and transcendental forms? Jeev Jagat Ishvara. This is the kind of context within which we have to think about the message of the Bhagavad Gita. And what happens when we are in denial of this reality? It leads to suffering. In lockdown, We may be in denial that I am a spiritual being and I've forgotten that. I don't know what I am even. I've got so confused that I don't even know what I am. And this Jagat is a very negative place which has brought this lockdown. And there is no Ishvara. Okay? When we deny these realities, it leads to even more suffering. And as we come into the reality of God through sadhana, suffering diminishes and we experience peace and ultimately enlightenment, complete enlightenment, so that there is no suffering in that state of the mind. Okay? So crisis of and suffering Arjuna in the middle of the battlefield, he refuses to fight. And what is the advice of Lord Krishna? He says, do not grieve, as you are not this physical entity, but you are the eternal Brahman. In order to go beyond suffering, the purpose is to liberate yourself from samsara. This is to be done by realization of your true nature, which is Brahman. And the starting point for this particular exercise, this pathway, which is going to lead us from the untruth to the truth of Brahman. Remember that prayer? Starting point is Karma Yoga, selfless service for inner purification. And we work on our desires, our attachments to the objects of our desires, the fruit of our actions, and our identification as this doer of this action and the enjoyer of the fruits of the action. Putting it very broadly, this is what Karma Yoga is going to deal with: desires, attachments, and this identity as the enjoyer and the doer. So going further, then it is the divine path of bhakti. From Karma Yoga, we think about Bhakti Yoga, and this purification comes to the discipline of the mind and the senses with the knowledge of the divine. The path of knowledge comes to us, and once the mind becomes purified, you are ready for meditation and absorption. And through meditation, you reach realization and discover your true identity, then obtain release from suffering and samsara. This is the pathway of dhyana or Ashtanga Yoga, which is chapter number 6 in the Bhagavad Gita. And releasing from avidya lockdown, okay, which has been going on for millions of lives. This is what really this lockdown is all about. And at the heart of sadhana is abhyas, practice, and vairagya, detachment. So this is the overall scheme. I'm just going to take you into much more detail in a minute. But the meditation which we are now going to do, another simple exercise but very effective, is this breathing awareness. So if you close your mind, close your eyes and take up this stillness of the posture, stillness of the gaze, and then scan your body quickly from tips of your toes to the top of your head. Just relax completely and just become aware of this breathing which is going on. In the stillness of the body, stillness of the gaze, just become aware of nothing else but the breathing process which is going on. Breathing in, breathing out, just breathe normally and just focus your awareness on just the breathing. Just focusing on the breathing, breathing in, breathing out. And now take your awareness to the sensation in the nostrils as the breathing, as the air kind of moves in and out of the nostrils. Just focus your attention on the sensation of the air as it moves in and out of the nostrils. Nothing else in your mind except just this one sensation. Try to unfocus from everything else and focus just on this sensation which is available to us as this sensation in the nostrils of the air moving in, moving out. Just take 1 minute to just exercise this. And you will see that just focusing on this way of being, this Yoga Sutra way of exercising this awareness, brings calmness to the mind. It may take a bit of time for the mind to settle down, but just keep on trying, focusing. If the mind goes to something else, just bring it back to the sensation and refocus and refocus and take your attention there and keep it there. Single pointedness of attention. This is what Yoga Sutra teaches. This is what Bhagavad Gita teaches. Take a moment to just focus on the sensation of the air as it moves in and out of the nostrils. Breathing in, breathing out. Okay, let's conclude that exercise. So I'm just kind of giving you a flavor of these exercises. But of course, this is the technique which you can use again. Take your time, do it in the way in which is most comfortable for you. And these are exercises which immediately can have an effect on the mind. So Karma Yoga, which I said is a starting point for our journey in spirituality. And what Bhagavan says is renouncing all actions in me with the mind centered on me, free from hope and egoism, free from mental fever, perform your action. In the lockdown, we are performing many actions, but we are performing in a state of anxiety. How we can give up this anxiety while still performing the actions which we need to perform is this 5-point plan. And I keep on telling the members of my class that remember 330. This is your 5-point plan. If you want to live this karma yoga way of living in your life, take this 5-point plan, memorize this, and practice this from moment to moment in your life. See what difference it will make. Okay? This is what karma yoga is about, is that having abandoned attachment to the fruit of the action, ever content, depending on nothing, without expectation, self-control, abandoning all possessiveness, content with whatever comes, free from the pairs of opposite, envy, even-minded in success and failure, he is not bound. So I'm just kind of giving you this content of the Bhagavad Gita, which is given to us in the Gita itself. And if you don't have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, please do get one, because this is important. The commentary of Puja Gurudev, Swami Chinmaya is so absolutely clear and fantastic that there is no confusion about what it is telling us to do. So make sure that you have this Holy Gita with yourself. Make it a practice to study at least 2 verses every day, and carry on doing whatever it is asking you to do. Do the things which are required to be done, and see what difference it makes in your own life. So what can you do? Living a life of Dharma according to the station and stage of life, thinking of your role as a parent, son, daughter, whatever your role is, and then dedicate all your actions to God. Think of God in all the actions. Bring God into the equation all the time. Equation of your life, equation of your transaction. Bring God into all these things. Dedicate all your actions to God. Keep the mind control in the moment on the task. Mind is focused, just like we focused on the breathing. You can focus on the task in hand. Just focus your mind, control the mind, keep it focused, and have the right intention and the right attitude. Why am I doing this? I'm dedicating all my actions to the Lord. I want to have this attitude of um, reverence to the Lord. At the same time, I'm saying to myself, actually, let whatever comes out of this action, let it be the gift of the Lord, the grace of the Lord. Detach from all the result of the actions. Let go of the regrets of the past and anxieties for the future. Just focus your mind on the task in hand. And I'm telling you, the way if you practice doing this, it becomes such an effective, efficient manner of functioning that you are able to finish stuff, and you can do more and more and more with this kind of state of the mind, which is achieved through this practice of karma yoga. Stay even-mindedness in the moment, here and now. Stay even-minded, completely even-minded. Not worry about shoka, moha, bhaya. Let go of everything. Stay in the here and the now. Whatever comes as a result of this dedicated action, accept it as prasadam of the Lord. Okay, this is Ishvara Arpan Buddhi, Prasad Buddhi. And let not attachments create any agitation in the mind. Attachment is really one of the things which keeps on creating agitation in the mind. Karma yoga and the sadhana of karma yoga makes us to let go of these attachments to the fruit of the action, to the objects of our desire, to indeed our sense of own identity, we can let go of all these things. Then going on to the path of devotion. So existing as Brahman, with his mind made tranquil, he neither laments nor hankers for anything. He is equal in all living beings. Such a person achieves the highest state of devotion to me. Again, Bhagwan is giving the markers of the devotee, and Bhagavad Gita is full of this devotional kind of relationship which we can create with the divine, and how we can indeed cultivate some of these wonderful qualities he talks about. For example, in chapter number 13 and the chapter before that, 11, he is giving us a whole set of qualities which we can cultivate in order for us to make this very strong connection with the divine. And he goes on to say that it is through the devotion that he gains knowledge of me. Devotion leads to knowledge of my greatness, of my true identity. When he thus properly understands me, he then immediately enters into my being. This is the path of bhakti, always performing his prescribed duties while remaining dependent on me. Sharanagati, surrender is there. Through the grace, he attains eternal changeless state. So just very briefly, kind of summarizing devotion in the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, just these verses can give us a kind of indication of what this is, but practically what we can do. So what are the principles of bhakti yoga? What can we do? The divine is to be known in both its manifest and unmanifest forms through devotion. Fix your mind on me, be devoted to me, sacrifice to me, surrender to me, having thus united your whole self to me, taking me as your supreme goal, you shall come to me. 934. Okay. Take up a daily worship of your chosen deity, puja. Engage fully the mind and the heart with this kind of practice. Japa is a wonderful way of, of a relation, cultivating our relationship to the divine. Take up a daily chanting of a mantra, your favorite mantra, whatever it is, your chosen deity. Japa on a regular basis, daily chanting makes a huge difference in terms of how the mind is coming down to a state of calmness and stillness through the chanting of the mantra. This is the best and the easiest means of focusing the mind and clearing the heart. And contemplation about the divine. Read the stories of the glories of God. Ramayana is available, Bhagavatam is there, Puranas are there. Cultivate unconditional love for God with faith, with surrender. And there are so many books available in Chinmaya Mission for these particular Itihas and Puranas, and wonderful kind of commentaries given by not only Gurudev, but also Guruji and Swamiji, Swami Swarupanand. All these are wonderful kind of things which the masters are giving us on a plate and saying, here you are, just take it and do whatever you need to do in your own life to have this wonderful peace and state of inner tranquility. Puja, japa, and chintanam, contemplation. These are the three things you can do on the path of bhakti. And then the path of knowledge. Purification comes through the discipline of the mind, senses with the knowledge of the divine, and basically it is about shravanam, mananam, nididhyasana, what I mentioned earlier, listening, reflection, and then nididhyasana, which is practice. And the summary is given again in chapter number 18. Now learn from me in brief how one has achieved this success, then attains Brahman, which is the culmination of realized knowledge. It is by properly engaging his purified intellect, controlling himself by his resolve, renouncing the objects of his senses such as sound, and setting aside both hankering and aversion, and then going on further to say, living in solitude. Now we are already living in solitude, but this is a different kind of solitude. It is a solitude, even in your marketplace, you can be in solitude. It is a state of the mind, this solitude. Eating only a small amount, regulating your speech, body, and mind, constantly dedicating yourself to the yoga of meditation, maintaining a mood of renunciation, giving up egoism, physical power, pride, desire, anger, and any sense of possession, having no conception of mind, and remaining always at peace. It is thus that he achieves the state of being. That is Brahman. Remember, that is our final spiritual destination, is to reveal to ourselves this, our true identity through sadhana, and that brings us the ultimate absolute resilience in life. think about this absolute state of being of Brahman is the absolute state of resilience. There is nothing which can disturb you, not which has passed, not which is in the future, not what is there in the present moment. Nothing can disturb you. Practically speaking, what can we do? This is the purification and this discipline of the mind and the senses, shravanam, listening to, reading about the knowledge of the divine self intently, mananam, reflecting deeply on what you have heard and read, so that this knowledge becomes like a clear jewel in your hand. Okay, it becomes so clear that you are able to know exactly what is being said, and reflecting on deeply gives you also conviction. The 4 C's which I talk about: clarity, comprehension, conviction, and then commitment. Commitment comes through this process of clarity, comprehension, conviction, and then commitment. If you really want to have this deep commitment, this is the process you need to go through. Relating this knowledge to your own life and putting it into practice. Practice is important. Practice, practice, practice. This is the message of the Bhagavad Gita. It's not a philosophy, but it is a practical philosophy which can be absorbed in each and every part of our life. And as I mentioned before, the Holy Gita by Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmaya is an excellent commentary for this sadhana. Get it today if you don't have it. If you have it, take it off the shelf and start reading. And the 9 tools of the spiritual toolkit. This is what I love the most about this knowledge, is it gives you very clear kind of tools as to how to deal. And this, in this lockdown, these 9 tools of the spiritual toolkit are so wonderfully appropriate for using that immediately it brings us relief from anxiety and depression. Number 1, discernment. Number 2, refocus, detach, and attach to the higher. And spiritual meaning of life, purpose, and values. Number 3, control of the mind, conscious directions of thoughts and feelings. Control of the senses, conscious directions of sense perception, objectification and depersonalization, becoming the observer of all the experiences. Forbearance, capacity to hold attention. This is very important in lockdown. Forbearance, developing and cultivating the capacity for forbearance through the meaning, purpose, values, through our sadhana, on the path of knowledge. This begins to cultivate in ourselves. And faith, implicit belief and trust in the words of the scriptures and the masters. Equanimity, resolution, bring the mind to a state of even-mindedness. Wonderful tools of our spiritual toolkit. Any moment you can just take out the right tool and start working at it, and then immediately it start making a difference. This is our day-to-day bread and butter spirituality, moment to moment. I keep on telling the members of the class, make every moment a spiritual moment. Every moment, if you make it a spiritual moment, spirituality is present and available in your life. And making the spiritual moment means what? Following this spiritual toolkit, taking discernment, control of the mind, control of the senses, as much as we can do that. This mastery which is given to us through this kind of toolkit is a wonderful thing to have in this lockdown. And finally, intense desire for spiritual and self-development. This is the fuel of our journey. Make sure that that intense desire is available to you. So Dhyana Yoga, meditation, do the stillness of the body and the stillness of the gaze 5 minutes every day. Do a body scan, relaxation once a day, 8 to 10 minutes. Do the breathing centered exercise as many times as you can, even 1 minute. Just center yourself in the breathing. Immediately it starts creating this peace in the mind. Do the being in the moment meditation. This is 10 minutes, okay? So create a daily spiritual plan and also write up a diary for all your experiences. Creating a structure of activities contains our energies in a positive way, and they can all be directed towards a daily plan. Remember what Swamiji says, Gurudev says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So having a plan in mind, giving structure to your life, giving structure on a day-to-day basis has a tremendous effect on our life, because it takes away anxiety, it takes away depression. And this provides regularity and consistency in practice. And remember, it is all about practice, abhyas and vairagya, Just like Bhagwan Shri Krishna says, it is all about practice. And create a plan of sadhana and practice, practice, practice. This is what we need to do. And the 4 A's of conscious living, this is again, if you don't have this book, also get this book called We Must by Puja Gurudev. And this is actually extracted from there. The 4 A's of conscious living: awareness, alertness, attention, action. And systematically, if we bring this into our life as a conscious spiritual way of living, it gives us this enormous resilience, which I was talking about earlier. It can cultivate this resilience to the extent that we can face up to any challenge. 4 A's of conscious living. Then let's go to the final meditation exercise. This is just going to take 5 minutes and then we'll conclude. So take up again the same posture, stillness of the body, close your eyes, stillness of the gaze, and then relax the body. Just take up the posture again, complete relaxation, and begin to focus on your breathing again. Take your awareness to the breathing in, breathing out, normally, naturally. And now take your attention to the sensation of the air as it moves in and out of the nostrils. Narrow down your awareness right to one point, which is just this sensation around the nostrils. Breathing in, breathing out. And now let go of this attention on the sensation and become aware of the feelings in your mind. Just become the observer of all the feelings in the mind and just be an observer without getting carried away by the emotion. Whatever it is, just let go and just observe. And as you do this, experience a peace and a calmness in the mind. As you breathe in, bring in peace and calmness. As you breathe out, let go of all the tensions and anxieties. Now take your awareness to the intellect and just observe the flow of thought as an observer, just stepping outside the river of the mind, of the thoughts, and just observe as an impartial observer whatever is going on at the level of the intellect. Whatever thought is coming up, just stand back and observe. Whatever the thoughts are, let them carry on. Don't get carried away with any thought. Just step back and observe. And as you observe, bring a sense of stillness and silence in the mind. Stillness and silence. Peace and calmness, stillness and silence in the mind, and just observe. Now say to yourself, I am not the body, but I have a body. I am not the mind, but I have a mind. I am not the intellect or the thoughts, but I have a thought and I have the intellect. I am the observer of the body, the mind, the intellect. I am the witness of the body, mind, and intellect. I am pure being. I am pure existence. Just stay with the sense of being. Step apart from body, mind, intellect, and just be with yourself as this absolute existence, absolute consciousness. Just stay with that state of being, which is beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, and stay centered in that sense of being. Just presence and being. Experience this deeply, just as a state of being and presence. Okay, let's begin to conclude this exercise. Open your eyes, and this is the guided meditation, which is the final one. And as I said, that you can use each one of these 4 meditations every day, whenever you need them. It's like when you have a headache, you take a Panadol. Yes, I got a headache. Let me take this prescription. Just like that, meditation, these very simple exercises can bring the mind to a state of stillness and calmness, and that becomes your daily prescription. Practice as many times as long as you wish to, but this is what is available to us through the philosophy and practice of the Bhagavad Gita. So we have talked about lockdown, its consequences. We've talked about searching for meaning and means. We've talked about sadhana, its philosophy and psychology. We talked about pathways to this inner balance, very kind of in a broad brush approach. We have done this, but of course, as I said, if you want to go into more detail, pick up the Holy Gita and read through it and understand it. And much, much more detail is available to us through the wonderful commentary of Puja Gurudev. And all these meditations which we have done, these are going to be practical things which you can do on a daily basis on the path of Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. All this I have kind of pointed out so that we can begin to get connected to all that knowledge through the practice, whatever it is, begin to create this plan in your life, a daily spiritual plan, which is going to take you in dealing with the lockdown in the most responsive, positive manner. So there you are. Thank you so much for participating, and I hope that you have enjoyed. Thank you very much for joining. So I will now hand over to Shiva.
Ramesh bhai, I've got a few questions which have been posted on the chat group. So let me read out one after another.
Okay.
I hope you can answer as many of these as possible. And if there are other questions, people please post them on the chat. Ramesh bhai, when one is facing the vicious spirals of stress, which keeps pushing them down further and further, how does one break out of this vicious spiral? So you've been emphasizing focusing the mind.
Yes.
But when one is suffering from constant negative thoughts and unable to focus on anything or keep their body or mind still, what should one do? And in this negative state, how does one develop the intense desire for self-development?
That's right. So there are 2 questions there. Let me answer the first one first. Is that how do we come out of this downward spiral? And this is a well-documented kind of way in which the mind functions in the state of anxiety. Okay. And here the solution is what? Is to break away from that particular thought process which is going on. And one way to do that is this simple exercise which I was showing you. Is just ground yourself in your physical sense of being. And as much as you can do that, you are then kind of getting away from this, intense spiraling down in the anxiety and going down and down and down. You can actually lift yourself out of that through some of these grounding exercises. These exercises in terms of the meditation which I did is just focus on the breathing. Take your mind as much as you can towards this sense of being in the embodied form for the time being. That kind of breaks up the cycle. And then to find ways of upward spiral. So there is a downward anxiety spiral, which once you break up that cycle through this grounding exercise of breathing, then you can take yourself upward by the knowledge and the practice of this spirituality. So there is a way in which it can be done. And I have taught this technique to many of these clients who I see who have this exactly the same problem. And then the way in which this is done is through this grounding exercise of focusing just on the breathing and bringing yourself to the reality of this body rather than just getting into the head and spiraling down. You come out of the head into the body for the time being so that you break up that spiral and then begin to take your thoughts and feelings through the mental control, through the mental discipline into the higher sense of values and meaning. This is how it can be done. The second part was really about how do we then, remind me again what it was. So it was about the way in which,
how do we develop the intense?
how do we develop cultivate this intense desire? And this doesn't come easily because, as I was saying, the conviction and the commitment can only come if we are clear about what the value of this wonderful knowledge is. If we find something valuable, we will give it significance. If we give it significance, there is a desire to attain that significance in our life. This is how the mind works. Unless we find significance in the spiritual way of being, that cultivation can only come through our understanding, through the reflection which we give it, and clarity of the knowledge, comprehension in relationship to my own life, and then the conviction begins to develop, and that provides the energy and the fuel for engaging positively and intensely with this spiritual pathway. So there are also means and ways of doing that. Sometimes it takes a bit of time, but certainly if you keep on trying and don't give up. Gurudev says, it's not how many times you fall down, but how many times you pick yourself up. And in this cultivation of this intense desire, it will happen many times. Sometimes even, the Madhyam and the Uttam seekers also find themselves, oh, I've lost track now. But because they've been practicing, they immediately return back to the track. And this intense desire is what propels their lives, what propels their thoughts and actions in the world. So it is possible, and it can be done through the 4 C's which I mentioned before. So next question, Shiva.
Thanks, Ramesh Bhai. The next one is, how do we use the mind management techniques that you spoke from the Bhagavad Gita to help others
Yes.
who do not believe in this approach during these tough times?
Yes. So remember, I was giving you the model of, the beliefs, attitudes, and intentions. So what happens is that, this is how counseling actually works, because people come with a very sedimented way of being in the world. Sedimented means that there are fixed beliefs, fixed ideas, fixed ways of acting in the world. And they say, okay, I can't go beyond this. I can't go beyond this because this is what I've always believed. This is what I've always had, this attitude, and so on and so on. First of all, this mind management technique is about what is giving rise to this distress in this person because of the beliefs they're holding. They may be holding some very negative beliefs about themselves. And our job is to then show them, actually, there is a choice you can make about how you're feeling about yourself. In other words, you can change your belief about yourself. Just like Bhagwan tells Arjun that you are thinking in this particular way of thinking, you are holding this belief that the death of this kith and kin is the end of everything. Bhagwan says, no, that's not true. What you got to change your belief is that this is really the outward expression of this transcendental Brahman. This is spirit embodied in this form. When the body falls flat on the ground, we say that is death. He says, no, the Atma continues. And this fundamental reframing, what Bhagwan gives right at the very beginning of this discourse, is to change this belief. And therefore, changing that beliefs brings about a certain re-experiencing of the same thing in a different way. So what we can do to help others is to say, okay, what is making you to, believe that this is the only way of thinking about this thing? Let's try to discuss about it. Let's see how we can think of it in different manner. Actually, it is so much about freedom and choice. That freedom is available to us in terms of changing our mindset, changing our beliefs, changing our attitudes according to the prescriptions of the scriptures. And this is what fundamentally Bhagavad Gita is doing. It is giving us an option. Don't believe like this, believe like this. Don't have this attitude, have this attitude. Don't have this intention behind every action which you have. Change your intention, change your belief, change your attitude. And when we begin to do that, what happens? The net experience of that is even-mindedness in our moment-to-moment experience. So it is possible to impart this very knowledge, but in a simplified manner, still using the same model, and discourse then takes place at the level of somebody's understanding. That is entirely possible, and anybody can do that. Okay, next question.
Ramesh, we've got quite a bit more of questions, but I think we will probably have to take one final question here. And hopefully others will get their turn at other times to answer their questions. But the final question I'm going to ask is the following. You mentioned detachment as a quality to practice, but wouldn't detachment lead to dereliction of duties? Duties to my parents, my children, and the broader society?
Not at all. I think this is a misunderstanding that detachment is about giving up. Okay, detachment is not about giving up. What I call detachment is refocusing. And refocusing means that I am saying to myself, actually, this is my dharma. Dharma, when it is done in the karma yoga way, in other words, karma yoga plus the role in life plus the station in life is equal to dharma. Karma yoga teaches us give up the sense of fruit of the action, which means detach from the fruit of the action, detach even if you can from the action itself, and detach yourself from this identification as a doer and the enjoyer. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to do anything for my children and for my spouse or my family simply because I'm saying, oh, I'm detached from everything, I'm not going to do anything. That is a tamasic response to spiritual life. What we need is a sattvic response, which says, I have to do it with a certain beliefs, a certain attitude, a certain consciousness. This consciousness is verse number 30, chapter number 3. This is called the spiritual consciousness of doing your actions, and you do them even more perfectly. It's not about detaching and saying, I'm not going to do this because now I'm detached from everything. No, it's about actually doing it in the right way with the right understanding of the philosophy and the right practice. And if you're able to do that, in fact, you become even more efficient. Remember, definition number 2 of yoga is what? Dexterity in action. In fact, you become so proficient at doing each and every action that people will come running to you because you have this quality which begins to develop as a result of living that kind of a dharmic life. So, in other words, that you can even have unconditional love towards your family with this kind of practice, and that takes you in a different dimension in your relationship with others around you and particularly your family. In fact, detachment leads to even a more engaging way of being with people and a more loving way, a more caring way of being with people. This is what spirituality gives us. And it's a tremendous gift which has been given to us. And if we can function in that way, well, there is no dereliction of duty. In fact, you perform things even better and more efficiently because all the clogs of the ego and the egocentric desires has been removed. All the dust and the mala, the impurities have been removed. So the divinity actually shines through this way of living. There is no doubt about that. Okay, so this will be, I think you said this is our final question. So we come to the end of the session now.
Great. Thank you, Ramesh Bhai. I'll now turn it over to Ravi Bhatt for some closing announcements.
Thank you, Shivaji, and thank you so much, Rameshji, for that most engaging talk and the extremely powerful meditation sessions. The tools and techniques that you've shared with us this evening from our ancient scriptures are very much timeless, and they're so incredibly useful for all of us to put into practice in our daily lives. Our heartfelt gratitude to you, Rameshji, once again. We have some brief announcements now ahead of bringing this evening's program to a close. As many of you will know, Chinmaya Mission is a global organization which exists to provide individuals from any background access to the universal wisdom of Vedanta and the practical means for personal growth and development, for individual benefit, as well as also to make positive contributions within society. The central aim of the organization is to give maximum happiness to the maximum number for the maximum time, through the spread of spiritual teachings of Advaita Vedanta, and also through a number of pioneering education and health projects, as well as empowering rural communities in India. If you would like to make a donation as a gesture of gratitude for the wisdom that we have been lucky enough to receive today, and also support the work that Chinmaya Mission does in the UK and globally, then you may do so at the link provided in the Zoom chat. Also, if you have been inspired by what we have heard today, one of the easiest ways to stay connected and learn more is to join one of Chinmaya Mission UK's weekly Vedanta discussion groups, currently taking place remotely on Zoom. These discussion groups are for anyone interested in learning more about Vedanta and are tailored for different age ranges. They are based around set texts which are discussed in an open and inclusive manner. If you'd like to learn more about these, as well as details of all of the other activities of Chinmaya Mission in the UK as well as globally, then please visit our website, chinmayauk.org. And as mentioned earlier, today's session was the first in a series of lockdown well-being themed talks, with the next talk titled Lockdown, Managing the Mind, scheduled to take place in the new year on Saturday 23rd of January at the same time as 7 p.m. Thereafter, the next talk in the series will take place on 20th of February, also at the same time, and will be titled Lockdown, Using the Spiritual Toolkit. Please do save these dates in your diaries, and more registration information will be sent out to you and will also be available on our website closer to the time. Before those talks, however, starting next week, the Global Chinmaya Mission family will be coming together for Tapo Gita Jayanti Fest from the 5th to the 25th of December. This will be a 21-day celebration on the YouTube Chinmaya channel, centered around the Bhagavad Gita. Please do join us online for this one-of-a-kind celebration. And lastly, Chinmaya Mission UK's bookshop continues to be open for orders at the newly launched online bookshop, which now also ships worldwide. That's at chinmayabooks.com. There, you can browse through hundreds of spiritual books, CDs, DVDs, as well as find copies of the Bhagavad Gita with commentary by Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda, available in a variety of formats. That concludes this evening's program. Thank you very much once again to Dr. Ramesh Pattni for this evening's talk and meditation sessions. Thank you to the Chinmaya Mission Sevaks and team for arranging today's program, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. I'll now hand over to Kalpanaji and Shivaji for some closing prayers to conclude this evening's program. Hari Om.
Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.